So on our agenda today, we're going to be going through, we have a few fleets with experienced vehicles on the road. And then as you, Jill from a utility will be talking about what to ask and how to prepare for bringing electrification into your fleet. We have a couple of great bus companies that are available, giving an overview of their products. And then as what everyone's here for probably a little bit is learning more about the funding. And then we're going to wrap that up with all the great questions you may have coming out of this webinar. So feel free to select, we're just looking to see who is in the audience and to help our speakers kind of know the general, who the general audience is in the groups to speak to different opportunities. So we'll just give this a moment. Few people still coming in online, so maybe 30 more seconds here and then we'll close that. Be sure to hit close when you're the little X in the corner to close out the poll box, otherwise you'll have a box in the corner still. Looks like it's kind of stopped here. If John, if you want to close that off and go on to the next slide. So every webinar has a few housekeeping notes here. First off, John, do you want to start the next slide or the next poll, please? And just getting a few perceptions from the audience. Depending on the layout of your screen and the program controls may vary whether they're in the location top or bottom, but look for the icons. Everyone is muted during this presentation. Please put all questions in the box and we'll go through those at the end. And then note the 3 dots for more icons for adjusting other settings. So we'll just give this about 20 more seconds for people to get in. It's kind of hard with a 1-word barrier. Great, if you want to close that and open up the next poll. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to think of a 1-word response in these instances. And we'll give it 15 more seconds here. Nice. All right, if we want to wrap up this poll here and on to the program. So the connection and relationship between the American Lung Association for today's topic isn't always obvious. The American Lung Association's mission is to save lives by improving lung health and preventing lung disease. And one strategy under that is to improve the air we breathe so that it will not cause or worsen lung disease. As we know, one of the single largest source of air pollution is motorized vehicles. Our current team listed here today on the slide, along with the map of our region of clean cities. As you've heard, Carly and I are co-hosting this. John Hunter will be leading the funding discussion. Tulu is running the question and answer, and Jenna is our behind the scenes North Dakota intern, helping us keep on track. Minnesota and North Dakota Clean Cities are two of nearly 80 coalitions throughout the country in the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities program. The coalitions are made up of stakeholders working to foster the nation's economic, environmental, and energy security by working locally to advocate for affordable domestic transportation fuels, energy efficient mobility systems, and other fuel savings technologies and practices. This can be done through use of alternative fuels like biofuels and electricity and other strategies. Next slide. Clean Cities coalitions benefit from the technology integration activities, which is represented in the graph here as part of a complementary framework for our daily work. This framework is bolstered by the local support through designated Clean Cities coalitions, where we have our finger on the pulse of local market conditions and priorities. Our coalitions continuously tap national resources to provide unbiased information tools, experts to address barriers and solve problems, national partnerships with industry and large national fleets, and publicity through mass media and outreach. And then what we all like to hear about, financial assistance to jumpstart markets and incentivize private investment. Next slide. Here's a brief overview of Minnesota and some of the work that our coalition is actively working on along with our partners. There's currently over 535 public and private charging sites with level 2 and DC fast charger, which includes over 1,200 charging units. You can see in the map the current coming projects through a variety of partners. This map is changing very often, and we know that there are other projects in the woodworks which haven't been announced yet. Projects included in this list are bigger Department of Energy supported projects, where we are lead on or supporting. And just to note, the Empower and Upper Midwest Intertribal project include both North Dakota and as well. A large portion of the infrastructure is via the VW settlements that is managed by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and they are currently in phase 2 of the funding. And on that note, Carly, are you ready to take the lead here?
Yep, thanks, Lisa. So I'll quickly talk about the progress North Dakota is making with electric vehicle infrastructure. So under the bipartisan infrastructure law, North Dakota will receive almost $26 million over the next 5 years to allow for EV corridors to be built out. There will also be another $2.5 billion available nationwide as a competitive grant for interstates and communities if the state wants to apply. North Dakota DOT is busy preparing for these new funds. Back in September of 2020, they published a study showing what the priority areas are for building out the EV charging. NDOT is now working to create a state plan for EV charging infrastructure, as well as examining electric transit opportunities and adopting EVs for their state fleet. MnDOT is creating a similar state plan for Minnesota, and both of which are due August 1st of this year. And now moving on to the VW settlement. Back in 2019, North Dakota Department of Environmental Quality funded 17 EV charging locations during the first round of the settlement. And now the third round of funding is open with applications due May 2nd. This round is for vehicles only, but it does include school buses, medium and heavy duty trucks, and a few other vehicle types. So overall, North Dakota is definitely making progress. And in the next few years, we're going to see major growth in the amount of charging stations and electric vehicle options like school buses. And just a reminder, North Dakota and Minnesota Clean Cities coalitions are here as a resource to help people along the way, whether you have questions about EVs, other alternative fuel vehicles, funding, or how we can work with your fleet. We'll also keep you informed about the public input opportunities that will be coming up in the future if you want to voice your opinion about what you'd like to see come out of the variety of new funding opportunities. So please reach out to Lisa or I or any of our team if you have any questions or would like our help. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Lisa.
Great, thank you, Carly. Next, we're going to hear an overview from some bus fleets. And first off, next slide is John Thomas, Eastern Carver School District Transportation Manager. Take it away, John.
All right, good morning, everybody. As Lisa said, my name is John Thomas. I'm the Director of Transportation for Eastern Carver County Schools, which is a suburban district in the southwest metro of the Twin Cities in Minnesota. We service about 84 square miles, encompassing 4 cities, Chaska, Chanhassen, Victoria, and Carver, plus about 30% of our district is rural. So we're a combination of suburban and rural district. We have about 9,500 students in the district. Our total fleet is about 134 vehicles, and 121 of them are school buses. Just to give you a little history for our district and my efforts here, I've been with the district for 20 years now. We actually began looking into alternative fuels back in 2009 during one of the huge fuel spikes that everybody was going through, and landed on LPG propane buses. And in 2010, we rolled out 18 propane school buses in our fleet to start the process, and have been introducing more into the fleet every year as we've moved on. Currently, we have 91 buses running on propane in our fleet. Most of them Bluebird Visions with the Roush system, but we do have a couple of PSIs as well. So looking into alternative ways to operate school buses and to help the environment and still be responsible for the school district and not taking anything away from the classrooms has been a big part of my career here, trying to be progressive with our transportation department. And as EVs started moving forward, and there were opportunities, I seriously looked into it and participated in quite a few different sessions talking about it. When the VW settlement came around, I was very interested in that. And so we purchased, with the help of American Lung Association and VW settlement, we now have an 84 passenger Bluebird Type D EV bus that we got last summer, and we've been operating it for about 5-6 months now. The history behind getting that bus, we first were able to get our VW settlement $100,000 in one of the early rollouts towards the bus. However, as I'm sure a lot of you know or will find out today, the cost of an EV bus is quite significantly more. And one of my charges and goals from my leadership was don't make it any more financially challenging for the school district. So we could not just take up the difference between that and the purchase of the bus without getting some kind of other partnership. Our local electric company did not want to participate in helping us. You'll find from the other speakers today that there is quite a bit of assistance from companies and providers, but ours did not. So I was very grateful and thankful that through our longstanding relationship with American Lung Association and Lisa, through our state association, MAPT, we were included in a larger grant with them to the EPA, and made up quite a bit of the difference, so that it was just the cost of the district was just like buying one of our other buses. So it wasn't anything more than that. We feel that it's been a great bus. We love the bus. Obviously, this is new to us, as it's new to quite a few people across the country. So every day we learn things. The driver had to learn how to drive the bus like an electric bus rather than a diesel or a propane. You don't quite have to put your foot to the floor to get it to move, and it's very quiet and things like that. So we learned about that. We also watch the charge every day. The bus is on a route that goes about 75 miles a day, both morning or in the morning and afternoon combined. We wanted to put it on something that we had confidence it could do as brand new. It does come back during the midday, but gets back here about 9:30 and is plugged back in again until about 2 o'clock. And what we're finding on a normal, nice day, it burns about 40% of its battery life in its morning route. And we do have somewhat of a hilly district, so that environmental impacts definitely affect the bus and its performance. So yeah, it comes back at about 60% charge and is ready to go again at 2 o'clock when it goes out for its afternoon route. We did find that weather, the northern temperatures do affect it. Once the temperatures got cold enough that the heaters came on, that affected the battery strength. And then obviously road conditions and stuff affected it. And we worked through with the driver to change some habits. We monitored things. It's to the point now that if it gets really, really cold right now, as we learn more, we'd only send it out for half a day, or we just don't send it out as we're trying to work through some stuff. And we've been working very closely with the manufacturer and the dealership about these things. Let's see, I'm looking through my notes here, so sorry about that. So overall, the cost of our bus was $399,000. However, I just want to stress to you that included, number one, the charging station, and the way we spec out our buses. We added some options to the bus that you don't necessarily have to add, but it was a $399,000 purchase, $100,000 from the VW settlement, and about $180,000 from Minnesota Pollution or from American Lung Association. We also found that the battery temperature, in order to charge the batteries, the system will work to get the batteries to a certain temperature before it charges them. So if it's very cold, the system will work to warm up the batteries before it starts charging them. And if it's a very hot day, it has to cool down the batteries before it starts charging them. So we park it inside, plugged in. It's not parked outside. But even then, on a cold day, we have to make sure the doors are closed and stuff. And we have to watch the length, because you would think that, okay, it's been plugged in for 4 hours. Well, it took a little while to get it to the charging time and stuff like that. Other than that, I think I'll answer more questions as we move along here. We love the bus. A majority of my routes, not all of them, but a majority of my routes could be done by an electric bus. We do feel that we're seeing a savings. The maintenance, the only thing we've done is we pulled the bus in twice just to see how it's doing. We checked the standard fluids like windshield washer and stuff, checked the connections and stuff like that. But other than that, we have had zero maintenance problems, haven't had to do any obvious oil change, filter change, things that we're doing with our other buses. Yeah, we would like to get more as we progressively go on. So we're very, very happy with this bus, and we're very happy that we are taking this experience and moving forward with it, as we know the industry is going to be changing. So I hope I gave everybody enough information.
Sounds great. Thank you, John. Next is Nick Martini, who is the coordinator of transportation for Osseo area schools. Thank you, Nick.
Hey, thanks for having me. A lot of our information here is similar to John, and it's the first time John and I have been together talking about this, so it's good to hear that we're seeing some consistency. So as introduced, I'm Nick Martini. I'm the coordinator of transportation for Osseo area schools here in the Northwest Metro in Minnesota. We serve all our parts of Osseo, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, Maple Grove, Dayton, and Plymouth. And this opportunity for us came about in conjunction with one of our transportation vendors, North Star Bus Lines. So we are a contracted service, not a district-owned fleet. I have two vendors that serve our district. We're about 22,000 kids, about 14,000 transported each day. And North Star was the one that wanted to volunteer for this pilot project. So our funds to help offset the cost of these buses were awarded through the MPCA and the Volkswagen settlement. We were the recipient of 3 of the initial 10 proposed pilot project buses. And so we are currently running all 3 of those routes, all three of those buses. We're sitting right now at about anywhere between 2,500 and 6,000 miles on the bus. 2 of them came into service in October, 1 in December. And so far, like John said, our experience has been overwhelmingly positive. We haven't noticed a ton of difference between the diesel buses and the propane buses. And our fleet currently is about 65% propane and that's over a fleet of about 160 yellow buses. So we've had some experience with switching to alternative fuels, and I've been here 4 years. That process started before I got here. When this opportunity came up, we were more than interested to take a jump at it and see what it could do for us, and how we could help the industry as a whole to figure out how is this going to perform in our climate, how is it going to perform in our environment. We are a mostly urban district, so electric buses are a good fit for us. We're a compact district of about 66 square miles. And so with that, we have lots of opportunity where we can fit these buses en route. So the buses that we went for were the Lion Cs. All three of them are the same model. And some of the things that we were excited about specifically with the Lion that we selected were it's got a little bit wider aisles. It's got composite body panels so that it doesn't rust. It's not subject to the same corrosion. And all that stuff coupled together was kind of, we're like, let's take a go at this and see how we can provide information back. So we created some great partnerships with the team at Xcel Energy and John Marshall. They worked hand in hand with North Star Bus Lines to get the infrastructure upgrades needed. Matt at North Star had already made significant investment in solar on his building, and so this was something that kind of fit into their plan. Xcel was a great partner in providing those upgrades, and they installed 5 chargers now in the anticipation that they're going to go after more buses. So much like John, I think being that we're mostly urban, we really see that most of our fleet could be conducted on daily range with electric buses. And as we continue to progress and prove this, we have an interest in adding more to the fleet. So, for us, talking to the drivers love the buses. They're quiet. They have had no issues with instability, anything like that. They handle great in the winter weather. They're stable. Traction has been great. I think it's helped out a little bit to have the extra weight throughout the vehicle with the batteries in the bottom. We in the southwest corner of our district have hilly terrain, and we've seen on snow days buses that will get stuck at the bottom of the hills and stuff. We haven't experienced any of those issues with the electric buses, and whether that's coincidental or not is it's something we're seeing, and so we're happy to report that. The kids love them. The first time we've rolled them out a couple press events, kids are excited to have a quote unquote Tesla bus. And so I think it kind of brings some attention and some positive thoughts for kids to busing as a whole. And it brings about that discussion that we can quickly intertwine with bus safety and things like that to get people, kids specifically, engaged. Our mechanics love them. As John said, no more oil changes. Downtime for preventative maintenance is much less. Similarly on the cold days, we have experienced the loss of a little bit of mileage, but nothing that has caused us to have issues or concerns about the ability to serve. One of the things that we did spec out our buses with is we do have diesel auxiliary heaters in the bus, and we did that specifically just because for us it was unproven on the battery life, and so that was more of a precautionary thing than a need. But so far, we've had no complaints or no issues from drivers or students or parents about the comfortable environment of the bus in this cold days. So it's really been great for us. Just trying to think of other things that we've had. One of the things that I would say has been a con is some of the speed of the bus. They want to get out on the freeway on field trips and stuff and run a little bit faster. Our buses, they can't be adjusted above 60 miles an hour, which is no concern on the route. However, a freeway situation, long-term freeway situation, it is a consideration, and we haven't run those yet. But really, that's been the biggest issue I would say that we've had. I mean, this has been a pretty problem-free experiment for us. We're excited to see what's coming with the future of it. We're getting our data on electrical charging, and we figured out that we're somewhere in that range of if we look at a diesel cost per gallon equivalent, what we're paying for electricity is like $1 per gallon of what the diesel equivalent would be. Maybe even a little bit less than that, and we'll continue to see more savings as if diesel prices continue to rise. So that's been a positive for us as well. Obviously, the zero tailpipe emissions is huge. We understand as we have this conversation that we did receive some pushback on our Facebook page about some of the naysayers talking about, well, how do you think electricity is produced? Well, I would argue that there is energy that's used to produce electricity, but there's also energy used to refine diesel fuel. Those are kind of comments that we took with a grain of salt. Overwhelmingly for us, I think this has been a positive experience. We're great. We've had great partnerships that we wouldn't have had we not had this project. And so we're just kind of proud to be on the front end and be able to help in any way we can. Similar to what John said, cost is a factor. If it wasn't for the grant money, I think it would be a different conversation. So for us, we received 3 grants of $275,000 roughly. So it brought the cost of the bus down to, it was actually, I think, probably cheaper than what a diesel bus would have been. But either way, it was competitive because much like John said, we have limited constraints on budget and we can't shell out extra money in our contracts to secure these types of vehicles. We just didn't have that planning in our budgetary cycle. Maybe that's something that comes in the future with assistance from the legislator or something like that. But, where we're at right now, we took the opportunity and we're glad to be a part of this.
Great. Thank you very much, Nick. Next, our third fleet discussion is with Deanne Recker. She is the Transportation Director with Morris Area School District. Thank you, Deanne. Deanne, it looks like you're still muted.
How is that?
That's great. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Hi, Morris Area Schools. So we are a rural community out here, which I think is kind of where a lot of the pilot program is interested in our area. We're pretty much all gravel roads, highway miles. We have a few kids in town, that we pick up along the way, but so we're really getting out, driving a lot of miles. Our average routes are probably 60 miles or so. We ended up getting 2 buses through the VW grant. Again, with the other buses, the grant was around $260,000. We ended up paying about the same as what a regular bus would cost before COVID. Now they're a little bit higher. We actually ended up going with Lion out of Canada because at that time Bluebird was not offering hydraulic brake buses, and that was a big factor for us as none of my drivers have air brake endorsements. So that's kind of where we went with Lion. They are very good at helping with situations or helping us online. They can plug in their laptop or my laptop and control a lot of things. I have found that, looking to the future of these buses, we're not able to diagnose anything. That part of it. We have had, unfortunately, we have had a lot of issues with our buses. We got them in September and they didn't meet Minnesota specs. So we didn't actually start driving them till November. And we had some shutting down issues where the bus just shuts off driving down the road on the first bus. So we parked that for approximately a month. And then we got that kind of figured out where we weren't, that wasn't happening with that bus. But then it started with the second bus. So that one was done about a month. And then now we're just having some charging issues. Internally, the cables aren't connecting to the charger. And anyways, just kind of fluky, really, really fluky issues in my mind. They're very good at helping, but it would be nice to be able to just, drive it down to Bluebird perhaps, and, have them deal with that part. But we've got both of those shutdown issues off, and we've been driving them quite a bit. Again, if it's extremely cold or windy, or a chance that they might get stuck. And then like right now, our gravel roads are extremely soft. So I have one bus that's on about a 60 mile route, and then one that's on about a 40. The 40 mile an hour route has no issues. He comes back with, 40-50%. But if I send the 60 mile route, he has softer roads. he's come home twice now in limp mode, which has 2 miles left or 3 miles left. And then he drove about maybe 54 miles. We have 100-mile buses because we needed the bigger 77 passengers. They come in different ranges depending on the size of the bus. So we have a lot of kids on our buses, so we need to go with the bigger ones. The drivers like them, the kids like them. There's so much interest in the community. We're actually having a big event to celebrate our buses on April 25th with the commissioner, maybe the governor, I'm not sure, and just a bunch of representatives. We have great backing by our community. We're a very green community with the UMM here. Our city is very green, getting into some electric transits of their own. That's been really positive. Again, we went with the diesel alternative heaters just because it is Minnesota, and we weren't positive how this was all going to work out. Great heat. We don't have any issues with that. Again, the batteries, again, warm up and cool off. We haven't really used them in extreme heat yet, just because we didn't start using them till November. Otter Tail Power here was they're a great help. They contributed some money also. Again, great support from the community. I don't know, what looks like in the future, if we continue to get grants. Obviously, we are a very small district and we can't really afford, to like outright purchase an electric bus. I'm looking forward to the future. I'm sure they're going to be improving batteries, technology, all that kind of stuff. But again, I think our issues are just fluky. And I'm hoping to once we get through them, we can, run them every day and go from there.
Thank you, Deanne. That was really great. So next is our Talking with Utilities segment. And here is Jill Ide, who is the Commercial, Industrial, and Agricultural Strategist with Great River Energy. So Jill, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning. So I work for Great River Energy and I manage our commercial, industrial, and agricultural programs and special projects. So a little bit with my presentation, my first few slides are going to target the fleet owners and what to think about when you're engaging with your utilities and engaging specifically with fleet charging. And then I'm going to shift a little bit to highlighting one of our pilot projects that's a bit of a case study example. Next slide, please. So starting with the fleet owners, connect with your utility as early as possible. Ask if there are incentives, if there's charging programs, if there's special rates, if you're interested in renewable energy, how can you think about engineering that on the front end? And then think about where in your facility or on your property do you want to locate your charging infrastructure? And is there power nearby that, or do you need to upgrade electric panels to provide that power? Some other questions to think about is there a utility engineering study required? If you have just 1 or 2 buses, probably not. But if you're thinking long-term, we plan to do 10 buses or 20 buses over the next 5 years, it's very possible you may need a transformer upgrade. And also, who pays for that? I think that's an important question to ask up front, and it can vary. Next slide, please. As you get further into the conversation with your utility, we're going to want some charging and quantity information to help us evaluate our transformer loads. How many buses are you planning today? So like I said, are you looking at 1 or 2? But then how many buses are you planning for tomorrow? Is the goal to convert the entire fleet to electric? And that's important because we as utilities are kind of long-term planners. And so as the utility, we might choose to upgrade that transformer for your long-term goals. What are the battery sizes and ranges for your electric school bus? And Do they meet your route needs? And then most importantly, what is the nameplate KW of the chargers? How many are you going to have? So what is your configuration there? And this type of information is what we need to think about to size our transformers, but it's also information you might see on like a rebate incentive application. Particularly here in Minnesota, our 2021 ECO Act legislation has really positioned utilities to incentivize battery electric school buses into the future. Next slide, please. So like I said, engage early and often with your utility. That's really key, especially right now if we need to order equipment. Just like everyone else, we're experiencing supply chain delays. I've heard from some utilities that they are ordering equipment up to a year in advance to ensure they have the equipment for planned upgrades. So that's really important. If you can, ask for an assigned point of contact at the utility, someone who's your point person that's going to return your calls and emails. Some utilities have this and some don't, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And then my last point here. So Great River Energy launched a battery electric school bus pilot project back in September of 2017. This was pre-Volkswagen funding. So we really approached this as a joint venture with our distribution utility partner, Dakota Electric Association, and then our bus operations partner, Schmidt & Sons in Lakeville, Minnesota. And this is where I'm going to start to transition to some of our utility programming and our pilot. Next slide, please. So we have some very clear and concise objectives when we went into this joint venture project. And the first is showcasing some new and emerging technology. And the photo here in the background is exactly that. It's our bus participating in the State Fair Parade. We've participated in the State Fair Parade every year since we put the bus into operation, with the exception of COVID 2020. We also want to better understand what the operational impacts are in our cold climate and what that means for bus range. And we're also documenting the actual real life economics of fuel and maintenance based on our experience with the battery electric school bus. And then with that, we also wanted to better quantify based on real life experience, what are the actual emissions reductions with this electric technology? Next slide. So these are some of our key findings. This is really based on the 2020-21 full school year report. August this year, we'll be coming out with this current year's school key findings. So of course, like everyone last year, operations was slightly different than a typical school year with COVID. But as the Lakeville School District fluctuated between in-person and remote learning, the bus also adapted by flexing to daycare services. So in all, we saw approximately 19,000 kilowatt hours of charging with this one bus, which was slightly down from previous years, but given the circumstances, not unexpected. Over the course of the year, we saw 8.5 days of outage on the battery electric school bus, primarily for minor repairs and general service. So things like fixing the stop sign arm. So, you know, little maintenance, things like that. And then here in the pie chart, on the right here, we see the total costs per mile of combined fuel and maintenance. So we expect this to have an unfavorable delta in the beginning, the earlier years of operation, but then we start to see that crossover point in year 4 last year, particularly as the diesel counterpart ages, we expect it to require more maintenance. So these numbers are also shaping up to be drastically different this year in our 5th year of operation, really thinking about the changes in diesel costs. So we expect this trend to continue. And then as you can see in the lower chart just shows that we've hit the crossover point last year. And like I said, as fuel prices stay high, the electric fuel is going to continue to look more and more favorable. And then finally, based on last year's operations, we saved a net of 25,000 pounds of CO2 emission equivalent compared to the diesel counterparts. So that's been a key takeaway for us as a utility, is quantifying those emissions reductions. Next slide. That's what I got for today. I think we're taking questions at the end, but if you have any questions, American Lung Association will have our contact information. So thank you again.
Thank you. Sounds like there might be some problems with people seeing the slide deck right now. So I don't know if you need to log out and come back in. If a lot of people are having problems, can you raise your hand? 5, 8, 9.
Wow.
Okay. John's going to refresh it here. And okay. How does that look now? Can people see the slide deck as we're scrolling through? Okay, thumbs up, great. All right, once John gets back to, we're gonna kick off one more, the last poll here, and apologies for the technology difficulties here, but just looking at see what are how people have done their work for reaching out to utilities or schools, specifically if you're a utility, have you reached out to your school? And if you're a school and fleet, have you reached out to your utility? So I know there's others that are not in those two categories. So we'll give it 30 seconds here. Again, if people don't have questions, they can lower their hands now. And 5 more seconds, and then we're going to close it. All right. So with that, thank you, Jill, for providing that great overview. Next, we're going to hear about the electric school bus companies. And with that, I'll hand it over to Neil Taylor, who is the electric EV business development manager for Bluebird. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Lisa. Everybody hear me okay?
Sounds great.
Great. So next slide, thank you. Appreciate all the feedback. It's great to hear the stories and the pluses and the minors for the school buses up to date in all of the districts. So thank you for that information. And at Bluebird, we do feel we are one of the leaders in alternative fuels. Sounds like Minnesota's got lots of our wonderful propane buses. And it's been a very good bus for all school districts that have incorporated propane into their fuel systems. We sold over 30,000 alternative fuel buses in the United States with CNG, propane, gas, and our EVs. We just delivered our 600th EV bus, and we have over 1,000 orders in for the EV buses through 2022. Like our partners and OEMs here, we are seeing updates on a pretty much monthly, quarterly basis on our buses. And we're excited to add those options to the buses going forward, including hydraulic brakes. I have to add that one in since somebody had to buy a Lion bus before. Next slide. Actually, we started the EV world back at the Atlanta Olympics, being a Georgia company.
Interrupt, Neil. I think people are having problems seeing the slide deck again.
Okay, I'm not running the slide deck.
Right. I'm just letting John know.
Yeah. Wait a second. Thanks, John.
All right, if you want to keep talking, if you are able to.
I will.
Thank you.
So we actually started off with an electric school bus for the Olympics in Atlanta. As I was saying, we build our electric buses here in Georgia, in Fort Valley. We've been 95 years building buses next year, so we've a little experience. So we started the electric school bus journey back in 1994 with lead acid batteries, and got a lot of great information on how to work those technologies into the buses today. Next slide. So like our partners, Bluebird does believe in supporting the full ecosystem. We believe, like the utilities were just saying, the first call is with your utility to ensure that you have good assessment of what you need to add chargers to your current charging stations or fueling stations and bus depots. We do have a grant writer on staff that can help you with grants and help to, whether that's the EPA or other grant opportunities, we can help with that at no charge. And we also have infrastructure partners that will help you work with utilities as far as trenching and ensuring you get the right chargers for the bus. All our buses come with V2G, V2X technology, so you can actually use the bus as a kind of a transformer on wheels for emergencies, or V2G for a form of income for your school districts to offset the cost of electricity. And we help with deployments and telematics from the buses. As one of the transport directors was saying, these buses are pretty much computers on wheels, and it's great to get information back on how your bus drivers are doing, how the bus is performing in different conditions, and how to drive the buses better or ensure you got the right charging during the day. And also, we're coming up with an end-of-life story. We believe these batteries will have quite an end-of-life story, for things like using the batteries on schools for backup from solar, like they do in California, maybe run a cell tower. So there'll be some great value for the batteries at the end of the school bus life. Next slide. Our electric recharge started with the current buses in 2016 through a grant from the Department of Energy, and we launched our first school bus in 2017, and we're in almost 4 or 5 years now delivering school buses into the United States and Canada. All our buses are V2G capable and come with both level 2 and level 3 charging capability, and we're also available in all types, type A, C, and D. And as I said, we've delivered over 600 buses and 1,000 EV sales in 26 states and 4 Canadian provinces. Bluebird safety is not an option. All our EV buses are built the same way that our propane, gasoline, CNG, and diesel buses are. They're all steel. This is so that they can pass the Kentucky pull test and Colorado racking. So they're built to the highest safety standards. That's number one, and we will never, compromise that. And we're very proud of that not being an option in our buses. Next slide. Here's our deployment map. Just give you a quick idea of all the states that, and this is a few months old now. We have deployed in a number of other states recently, so we need to send you an updated map. But I think the story is here. Everybody with the grants that are available, and how great these buses are to for the community, and in all weather conditions, cold, hot, mountainous. We get great stories of great traction. I've heard that today from one of the transport directors. We just spoke to a transport director in Colorado that received their first Bluebird buses, and they say they perform exceptionally well in ice and snow because of their low center of gravity and the evenness of the weight across the chassis with the batteries between the frame rails. Next slide. Our options on our buses, we do have air ride suspension. We have options for AC, both roof and skirt mounted, wheelchair lifts, luggage tool compartments, and heaters. We do have an updated heaters. We have 3 heaters on the bus. 1 is dedicated for the batteries, and 2 are dedicated for the cabin heat. And that's outside of having any kind of diesel-fired heater. We found with these new heaters from the 2022 onwards that most school districts have not needed the fuel-fired heater option. Battery insulation is an option as well for colder climates. pretty much anything north, we're seeing the most options for that. And with the Type C, we say auxiliary heating is something that some school districts take advantage of. All our buses come with both level 2 and level 3 charging connector. Power required for charging is a max of 19 kilowatt charge rate for the level 2s, and supplied with single phase 240, 80 amp current to 100 amp fuse. So pretty much standard, nothing proprietary here at all. Charging cost level 2 for anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, and DC fast chargers anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000. And most of the grants cover a lot of these costs. Thank you. Next slide. And that's it from me.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Lisa.
much. Thank you. Just remember to please type in your questions into the Q&A area. And next up is Tom Polzen, is the next IC Bus EV sales specialist with IC Bus. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity. Next slide, please. Next slide. You know, what I want to first start out with is why EV and what's at stake, right? I know Lisa had mentioned it, Neil had mentioned it as well, as, you know, the public health and safety of our kids, right? Our most precious cargo is our students. And, you know, kids' lungs are in development stage, right? And it's important that, you know, it's not compromised by diesel fuel and the fumes and air pollution that comes from you know, the diesel. And, you know, one other thing that we want to really take a close look at is really cost savings. I know that it was brought up a little bit by Nick and also John about, you know, what kind of savings is out there in terms of not only the fuel, the difference between the diesel and the electric school buses, but also the maintenance on those buses. Studies have been done that shows about $4,400 in maintenance savings for parts and service. So that's another good opportunity in terms of why go EV. Less moving parts, more opportunity for you. In terms of the jobs that are being created in this industry, it's really helpful for our country that there's about 11 million new jobs being created just because of all the hype and movement towards electrification of fleets. Next slide. As Neil had indicated, the ecosystem is probably the most important process of electrification for school buses. And we've got a five-step approach. It's called our 5 C's that we feel are critical and important, and it's all encompassing. You know, the first 2 steps here of the consulting and charging are probably the 2 first and most important ones that you want to take a look at, but then we get into construction, connected services, and also conserving. What's the next steps when the buses reach their end of life, and all of the batteries as well. So I'm going to go into each one of these real quick, but on the consulting services, you know, we want to make sure that the school districts and the contractors that are buying buses have a pretty good understanding of what it's going to look like as they move forward. Does it make sense to go into electrifying your school buses? I think that each and every school that's out there probably have opportunities for electrification, but we help in terms of understanding what the total cost of ownership is for a school bus when it comes to electrification. We do route analysis to determine the amount of miles that are available that are out there. You know, if you have a bus that goes 160 miles in a day, are you going to be able to support that when it comes to charging that bus and getting back? You know, we don't want buses limping back to the school district and to where you store them each and every day. So understanding the routes that you might be considering, helping you prioritize your routes. You might say, well, we've got, you know, such and such routes, you know, we'd like to start out here, but long term we want to be able to help understand and help the school districts kind of prioritize where they want to put their EV buses when they buy them. You know, the environment, we talked a lot about charging and infrastructure. That's what we're working on in terms of that, but also the safety and whatnot going to EV.
Hey,
But it's
Tom,
great. Yeah.
John's going to refresh the slides again real quick, but please keep talking.
Okay. You know, EV training is critical as well, right? You know, the mechanics that work on these things, electrification is completely different in terms of what you have to service. You know, the chassis are completely different than, you know, fuel buses that are out there as well. The journey for electrification is a lot different as well in terms of, you know, how long the process takes. The process itself, it's a lot more difficult. It's not like you typically order a school bus and it's going to take you a lot longer time, as Jill had indicated earlier in the conversation and some of the other individuals. When it comes to funding, I'm not going to talk a lot about the funding piece itself here for the simple fact that we've went through that. Jill went through it a little bit, but there are a couple of things that you should know. You know, the EPA Clean School Bus Program is actually going to have some additional details, critical information that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So keep your eyes open for that. It really will fill in the blanks on the questions that you might have on that. If you haven't jumped on the EPA Clean School Bus website, I would encourage you to do so. Also, it's important to note too, with that EPA funding dollars, if you're putting on fuel-fired heaters on their buses, they're not going to qualify for any of that funding. So that's a critical element as you move forward as well. Next slide. As far as charging, we really believe that charging infrastructure is really critical. As Neil said, this is where you got to really start out. Jill did a great job of explaining the process that goes into charging and infrastructure. So you'll have those slides to kind of rely back on, but it's really critical that you're spending time now getting in touch with your local utilities, to help understand what you're going to need to be able to install your chargers and have a turnkey operation once your buses arrive. So charging and infrastructure is important. Also, it's important to, when you're doing the charging, we work with a company called InCharge, and they're a partner when it comes to infrastructure. They've got grant funding people that are available from an infrastructure and charging perspective, as we've got grant people working on our organization as well. So we're here to help support from a charging perspective as well. Next slide. Construction. Our buses are all made in our Tulsa plant. That's where all of our buses come off. They come off the same manufacturer line. The bus itself, the body is pretty much the same as it is on all of our other buses. The only difference is in the chassis itself. We've got the best in class school bus in terms of miles. We've got a model that has the ability to do over 200 plus miles per charge. That's a 315 kilowatt charger. We also have a 130 mile range school bus. That's the 110 kilowatt school bus. Ours has got a direct drive motor to it, so you don't have a transmission included in our bus. It's direct drive, so that's less parts to go wrong down the road. We've got an electronic instrument panel that's really nice. If you haven't seen it, we encourage you to take a look at it. We have electronic stability control, which is standard on all of our school buses. And we also have got 3 levels of regenerative braking that's available on our school bus. And lastly, our school bus will take a charge up to 125 kilowatts at one given time. That's about double what the industry average is. So, you know, being able to put more power in your bus faster will allow you to really get those buses up and operational, maybe in between your morning routes and your afternoon routes. So that's important. And then the connected services. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but I know that it was discussed a little bit earlier today about some of the solutions that are out there in terms of being able to monitor real time how your charging and infrastructure looks on your school buses. But, you know, we've got Khajiit wireless Wi-Fi solution that's included standard on our school buses. We've got our health reports that are available for our school buses called On Command Connect. That's available. And then we've got IC Bus 360, which is a service portal that's live that you can see if you've got a bus that's being fixed, where it's at any given time. And then the last, the next slide, please, is conserving. And what's going to happen after that bus or battery gets to the end of its life. First and foremost, the batteries, once they lose their end of life, might not have functionality when it comes to the school bus, but there's probably a minimum of 50% of that battery life left. And you'll see that moving forward, maybe it's a solar application where you have solar panels and you can use those batteries out of the vehicles as a battery backup for buildings and things like that. But it's also important to understand that about 95% of the battery makeup is recyclable. So in those cases where you can't reuse the batteries, you'll have the ability to recycle those as well. So with that being said, that's what I've got for the group today, and turn it over to Richard Lee from Lion Bus.
Great, thanks. And John, do you want to just refresh the slide deck one more time? And Rick Lee is the Director of Sales for Lion Bus. So thank you, Rick.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Tom, for the introduction. Very kind of you. We'll wait till my screen gets up. I guess I'll just keep moving along here. First of all, Lung Association, North Dakota, and Minnesota Clean Cities groups to supporting this webinar today. One of the challenges that all four of us OEM have is the footprint of EV in the school bus market, and without associations like you, our job just became harder. So again, thank you very much for having us here today and supporting our initiative to bring electric school buses to the United States. Well, as I mentioned, the first electric school bus was deployed in 2018. Currently, Lion Electric in the U.S. has a little bit over 600 units operating. The four OEM suppliers are actively bringing buses into the U.S. I think all four of us can admit that the future is very bright in EV school bus technology, especially with the infrastructure bill coming down here shortly this month, hopefully, with our fingers crossed that the application process begins at the end of April. And I believe Neil hit it on the head, or it might have been Tom. The health of the children is crucial when we talk about EV school buses. You know, the lungs are immature, they're not developed, and every morning and every afternoon they sit out on the curb and inhale diesel fumes, GHG toxic fumes. So above and beyond all the other funding and grant platforms, I think the health of these young children is a driving point of where EV fit in the United States and Canada, for that matter. Lion Electric, if you haven't heard, has committed to the United States. We are in the process of completing our 900,000 square foot all electric facility in Joliet, Illinois. This facility will have the capabilities of producing 1,400 vehicles by 2023. Now, I'm not telling you we're going to create 1,400 vehicles in 2023, but our facility will eventually have the capabilities to produce that type of volume. So that right there states to everybody on this webinar today that EV is coming, it's coming fast, and it is the future. We believe at Lion Electric, the vision is to support and provide the best valued electric school bus in the school bus industry. All four OEMs have their little quirks and positives that they promote. And it was mentioned earlier today, our uniqueness is that we're 100% built electric. We don't have a fossil fuel setup, and also that we use composite body material instead of the traditional legacy design. Beyond that, a lot of the technologies throughout all four OEMs are very, very similar. Also, we are bringing a facility into Shakopee. Hope I said that right. Shakopee, Minnesota. We call it an experience center, but what it is, it's a mobile service center facility to handle vehicles in Minnesota and neighboring states. Currently, we have, I believe, 6 units running around Minnesota. And we're looking for Minnesota to be a popular site for EV. One of the unique things I'd like to share with everybody is beyond California, the Midwest is the second, for Lion Electric at least, the Midwest is the second highest populated of EV school buses. A lot of people think that rural United States is not a choice for EV. And on the contrary, Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, people would be surprised how many vehicles are running around cold weather states. So don't let that scare you when you think about your weather conditions in EV school buses, because it's false narrative. So why choose an electric vehicle? And there's many factors. Neil had touched on some of them, but it's the largest source. Transportation is the largest source of GHG. And when you think about how many school bus kids are on a bus every morning, it gives you a content of what I mean by GHG being the largest source. Eliminates noise pollution. Kids come to school with a more calm down attitude because they're not screaming and hollering, talking to their friends over the sound of a diesel engine. Clean air. All of us have touched base on the importance of these young lungs having the ability to inhale clean air instead of toxic fumes. It's the most energy efficient solution above and beyond diesel. I believe Neil touched base on the low maintenance of electric vehicles, what they bring to a fleet operator. But more important than anything, it's the more you drive, the more you save. When those vehicles are not moving, you are not savings. So when we talk about route demands, you want to, I don't want to say tax out the vehicle, but you want to use that bus in the most efficient route to give you the savings that's required. Next slide, please. So very good. So discovery of the value of EV technology. Lion Electric, we have 3 battery pack ranges, 1 to 55. That's I think the 130 to 125 is probably the most popular. I know that Tom has a workhorse that gives you a little bit of, above 200. It brings you clean energy solutions to your fleet, and it has proven technology. This is not pilot programming anymore. Whether you talk about Lion Electric or the other 3 OEMs, there is proven vehicles traveling down the road. So it's no longer considered a pilot program. This is proven. Cost of ownership is lower. Viable solution of the 16-year battery life. We feel that the degradation rate of currently our batteries that are operating in the United States and Canada through telematics, that we feel that the batteries are going to outlive the bus. And we talk about second life battery technology. I know that Tom touched base on that quickly. Building to building, powering, mobile vehicle grid units that can go to disaster relief areas. So it's the unknown. Nobody has vehicles out there that are 16 to 18 years old, but we all feel that the second life of the battery technology is going to be a booming success 15 years from now. And we don't have the answers. None of us OEMs do, but as time grows, I think people are going to be surprised what these batteries bring to the United States in general, outside of the school bus world. Next slide, please. So at Lion, we have what we call the Lion Experience, vehicle and equipment choices. We offer 3 models. It's important that salespeople come in and profile your fleet. We don't want to sell you something that isn't going to work in your route demand or your route expectations. We come in and work with the grants team, funding resources. We have people that will help school districts. We understand that school districts are taxed with personnel and time. So if an OEM can provide you the support to help you get that application and do the research of your application submitted, it only increases your odds of being one of the awardees of a grant. So we offer that to our customers. Charging solutions, Lion Energy, kind of falls in hand with our infrastructure team. We work with electric co-op groups to make sure that you have the proper setup on your facility to even handle electric vehicles. Too many people stop at the 6 wheels of the school bus. There's a lot more bringing electric vehicles into your facility beyond the school bus. And we want to make sure that the comfortable the customer is comfortable with the process, with the charger infrastructure, and working with the electric co-op to make sure that they have the amount of electricity that is needed to power the vehicles that you're bringing into your fleet. And last but not least, training. And a lot of times people are scared when they hear the word electric. But honestly, and speaking probably for 4 OEMs, mechanics and drivers are surprised how simple electric vehicles are. I know a lot of people want to overthink it, but it's software driven. It's a laptop. And you know, the days of not having diesel underneath your fingernails and going home, it's going to be gone. But that doesn't mean people are going to lose their job either. You still have your standard maintenance and preventive maintenance of school buses. In terms of training also, and we might do something differently than other people, is we bring in the first responders, the fire departments, police departments into the from the community. So when they, God forbid, roll up to a situation, they are not surprised or not knowing what they're rolling up to. So we take it to the next level in terms of training. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and it's just going to come back and refresh the benefits of EV school bus. The more you use it, the more you save. And it's crucial that we understand that statement. The savings 60% approximately on maintenance. And we all know that a new school bus, after about 5 years, it starts to nickel and dime a school district. So the savings isn't the first 5 years of a TCO. It's from 5 years to that 15-year mark that the caliber of savings that the EV will bring to your fleet is evident. Second of all, the engineering energy cost. When you break down the kilowatt versus a gallon of diesel, we have some users that have live data on their school website. It's amazing how many miles you can drive on a kilowatt compared to a diesel. Regenerative braking is a facet that all of us use. And I want to be perfectly clear that every school bus driver isn't the person to be put behind an EV school bus. If the driver does not embrace the regenerative braking, then you're throwing money out the window, because regenerative braking will bring value in kilowatts back to your battery pack, which eliminates how much you have to charge at the end of the day. The maintenance, self-described, everything from brake maintenance to oil changes to tire rotations and tire replacement. And coming back to the last bullet point, transmission servicing, exhaust components, emission testings, and dealing with the diesel and gas and what they bring to the table. Speaking on behalf of Lion Electric, electrification is transportation and is here now today. With the EPA grant funding coming up, hopefully at the end of April, we're just starting the ball rolling down the hill. And I can speak for all 4 EMs. It's going to be a heck of a ride over the next 6 years. Thank you very much for everybody's time today and allowing Lion Electric to present.
Thank you, Rick. Wrapping up our bus segment is Todd Tellen. He is the President General Manager of Tellen Transportation Group. Thank you, Tom. Todd. You may be muted. Is Todd still on the presentation here? Looks like he may have dropped off. All right, well, just in consideration of time, we will be sharing these presentation slides afterwards. So we will share these later, and if he jumps back on, we'll come back to him. And with that, we're gonna open it up for the funding opportunity discussion with John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Lisa. So yeah, as mentioned, I think a lot of folks know there are a few different funding opportunities coming up. We're going to focus on the EPA stuff. Again, my name is John Hunter. I'm with the American Lung Association, supporting both Minnesota and North Dakota Clean Cities Coalitions. So I think, as many people know, in November, the bipartisan infrastructure law got put into place. It includes $5 billion for clean school bus funding programs over the next 5 years. The law specifically stated that the funding should go for 50% should go to what it terms as zero emission school buses, for the battery electric school buses. The other half of the funding is available for just more broadly what it defines as clean school buses, being alternative fuels like propane, or that funding can also be used for other additional electric school buses. The EPA is starting off the program with a $500 million rebate program that is anticipated to open up this April, and will be accepting applications for approximately 3 months. They have stated it's their goal for it to be a very simple application process. Part of the reason they wanted to do a rebate program was they felt it could be shorter and quicker to implement and be easier to apply for. So they are starting off with the rebate program. There's the potential for grant programs and other forms of the funding to come at later rounds. But in this case, it will be a rebate program that will be specific to the cost of the bus itself and charging or refueling equipment needed for the buses as well. I paused my own slide, sorry. So who is eligible to apply? The law specifies that local governments or school districts, either kind of the public local governments or tribal organizations, tribal governments, tribal school districts, as long as they are responsible for providing bus service or the purchasing of the buses, they count as eligible entities. Nonprofit school transportation associations, and then contractors can apply as well as listed eligible entities. So that includes bus dealers and bus manufacturers, as well as people responsible for the charging equipment or financing related to any of those kind of things. If you are someone like a dealer who is applying on behalf of a school district, you'll need to be able to demonstrate that you have their permission for that kind of activity, that you have an agreement in place with them. You'll also need to demonstrate that the bus will be put in service with a given school district for at least 5 years of timing. I'll talk a little bit about what we sort of do know and don't know about the rebate program that's coming up at this point. The law specifically prioritizes a few different categories. One is what they term high need school districts. Tribal schools and rural and low income areas are all priority areas. And the EPA will be putting out a list of the priority areas with the application materials and that kind of stuff. So folks will know kind of whether or not they fall into that category or not. The law also does say that priority can be given to school districts or applicants who are offering to do additional cost share and things like that. So that that may influence, I guess, different levels of possible support as well. This will count as under what is known as the Justice 40 initiative. It's an executive order that's working to prioritize at least 40% of federal government funding opportunities to flow down to what are considered disadvantaged communities that overlap and match well with what the law was already prioritizing. So I think it's reasonable to assume that the EPA will be aiming for at least 40% of the support to go toward the prioritized areas, but it may be well above that. But everyone is eligible to apply and encouraged to apply quite widely. The other thing to note is that the amount of funding somebody qualifies for may or may not be influenced by whether or not they're a priority area. The law specifically states that the rebate program could be used to fund up to 100% of bus and charging equipment, but it doesn't necessarily have to go that high. So that's kind of one of those details that we are remaining to see what will exist at this point. We do think they'll probably be using a lottery system among eligible applicants. So of all the folks that put in their applications, once it comes down to choosing among everyone who is eligible at that point, they'll be using a lottery system to kind of pick the final winners. And it should be noted, this is the first of several grant programs or rebate programs coming up. So there will be multiple opportunities for school districts to participate, and schools will be able to participate in multiple rounds as well. It is a change-out program. It's designed to get older buses off the road and new buses into service. So the one thing we don't really know yet is what age of bus will be expected to kind of be retired in the process. I know that has influenced whether or not some school districts have been able to apply for Volkswagen funding and other funding opportunities, but it kind of remains to be seen exactly what years they'll be looking for coming up. So there are a few things people can start doing now, even before we know what's coming up or what the exact kind of final efforts are. And most of these are just useful things to be doing anyway with the fleet. So as mentioned, of course, already, talk with your utility kind of gets emphasized over and over. I know I think it was about 50% of our poll folks mentioned that they hadn't yet talked to their utility. So it's a good thing to start doing as soon as you start thinking about school buses and just get to know your folks. The EPA has a template that's kind of designed to prep people for starting to think about what will be on the rebate application. A lot of folks may already have kind of this built into their telematics information, but it includes things like, looking to create a list of, VINs and make and models and what size, buses you have now and kind of how you're using your fleet currently, how much fuel you're using, how often you're parked at home, that kind of stuff. So we will share that template, link to that template in the follow-up materials that we do. And I know we're kind of getting short on time, so I want to squeeze in real quick. Just there's preparing, if you're not already registered for SAM.gov, that's kind of the federal system for checking about who's officially authorized. And we encourage you to sign up for both Clean Cities newsletters to tell you about upcoming funding opportunities, both on the federal level, but also state and local opportunities. And the EPA has a specific contact list in development for the Clean School Bus Initiative as well that is available on the EPA website, and we will also send that out in follow-up. So Lisa, that's it for me. Do you want to go back to Todd?
Yeah, that'd be great. And again, I see there's just a few questions with hands raised, but we will perhaps have to follow up with them via email with our time schedule. So and make sure Todd is unmuted from your side, John, if possible. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Lisa? Are we good?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I did that on purpose because I want to stand out as so everybody remembers who Todd Tallene is. So at any rate, looking at the folks on the line, a lot of you know me already, but for those of you that don't, my name is Todd Tallene, and I'm the president and owner of Tallene Transportation Group. We are the dealer for Thomas School Buses in the state of Minnesota. And Thomas School Bus is a wholly owned subsidiary of Daimler Trucks North America. And I say that on purpose because Daimler Trucks North America is the largest manufacturer of commercial vehicles in North America. And with that comes a lot of engineering, a lot of horsepower. And I use horsepower on purpose. So on the first slide, we'll buzz through these pretty quick since we're getting kind of tight on time. 136 miles of range. Get into the peak power and all that stuff. That all sounds good, but really what matters is how the vehicle performs. Next, one thing, and we are, as opposed to I think other manufacturers do an AC charge, we're a DC charge, and Daimler and Freightliner decided to go DC charge for 3 reasons. They feel like as if it's a heavier duty system, It's more compatible for vehicle to grid, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And it has the capacity to charge faster. Next slide. So as with all EVs, no fuel. We don't use a fuel fired heater. Ours is an electric heater, and Thomas on purpose did that because when they say true emission free, they want to mean true emission free. As everybody else has spoken about, you know the advantages of the electric EV. Next slide, please. So Daimler, along with Thomas Bus, partnered with Proterra for their EV side of the powertrain. Proterra is a company that's been building transit buses, electric transit buses for quite a few years. You know, you can see their 20 million service miles on transit. So Daimler, being who they are, they could do anything they wanted to. They chose to partner with Proterra. And matter of fact, they think so highly of Proterra and their battery technology that they bought part of the company. So they are a stockholder in Proterra batteries. Next slide, please. So there's multiple ways to charge our vehicle as well as everybody else's. There's this on the left-hand slide, I'd say that's more the slower chargers. You see the kilowatt, the 24 kW. And so far, and on the right side of the slide is the fast chargers. And like anything, with speed comes cost. The least expensive ones are on the left-hand side, the slower ones, the more expensive big boy chargers on the right-hand side. And chargers can vary from 8-9 grand on the bottom side to, I suppose 50, 60 on the high-end side. Depending on, but it's all about speed and how many buses you can charge at one time and so on and so forth. So next slide, please. Energy determines range, and I'm not going to get into the deep weeds in this. There's a lot of stuff into here, but it is part of our slide pack, so that if you want to study what Proterra is doing compared to others, you can see that. And with the batteries, just like some of the other guys stole my thunder. I hear this. What happens to battery when life of the bus is done, and is it going to go to landfill? No, batteries don't go in landfills. You don't put your car battery in a landfill. This battery's got a second life, and it's going to go to a static location. It'll go in a warehouse to be auxiliary power for utility, or maybe a school, as somebody had mentioned, or a building of some sort. So next slide, please. Talk a little bit about the warranty, and I'm going to go into what the bus itself in just a little bit. But a standard bus, no matter what powertrain has, whether it's diesel or electric, it's the 3-year, 50,000 miles. The battery has got an 8-year. Drivetrain is 5-year. But what I liked is the extended warranty available, and it's not terribly expensive. You can go up to 10 or 12 years on the warranty on the batteries. And again, it's been talked about. We truly don't know what 10 or 12 years will look like for this battery, because even though you do bench tests and all this engineering, there's nothing like real life testing. So time will tell. Next slide, please. So the way Thomas Bus approaches it, they have 3 levels of training. There's the HV1, which is generally the driver to train them on how to operate the bus. HV2 is for a tech that can work on everything low voltage. So on every piece of equipment, every electric bus, there's a low voltage side, which is traditional 12 volt, just like we have today, and there's a high volt side. And I've been through HV training 1 and 2. I've got techs have been through HV3. What I do know for my training is for me, because I'm not HV, don't touch the orange wires. Everybody uses orange wires. That's high voltage. That's a no-no unless you've been trained. Next slide, please. Okay, we'll wrap this up real quick. So the reason I wanted to be on this call, it isn't because I like to do all the talking all the time, which people that know me know, yeah, I do. I like to do all the talking all the time. But I wanted people on the call to know I am the local dealer for this. I take this seriously. I've drank the EV Kool-Aid, and I believe in it. And Thomas Bus has it. They endowment. They can do anything they want for powertrain. Could have had a gas engine, and we've had a propane in the past. But what they're doing is they're using their diesel engine as a bridge to electrification. And an electric bus isn't for every application. If there's a hockey team going from the Twin Cities to Duluth, you're not going to take that electric bus. You're going to have to take your diesel powered bus. That's just the way it is for now. But 80 to 90% of school bus fleets never leave the district. So there's a good percentage of the buses can be electric. So, but that's part of the reason I wanted to be on the call, is because I want you to know that I am the guy here in Minnesota, and I believe in the technology and the EV, and I'm here to cover it. If you go back one slide real quick, I know I'm running out of time, but I just want to say one couple of quick things. Nope, back to my, it's all about me, John. You got to look at my slide. So it just on our side, we've got training and all that stuff. We got 3 buses on order. I wanted to point this out. They're going to be here this summer. One's going to Fergus, one's going to Faribault, one's going to Minneapolis. I wanted to share the Minneapolis story with you really quick. And it's not about me, but it's about EV. That bus is going to be parked outside at Monarch School Bus Operations in North Minneapolis. We purposely put the smallest charger we could in there. So at least in our EV bus, and I think others, but ours, it does not need to be parked inside a heated garage. The electric, when it's plugged in, it'll warm that battery. Batteries in every vehicle want to be, they're Goldilocks. They don't want to like be too hot. They don't like to be too cold. So there's water or coolant circulated around to keep that battery optimum temperature. So if it's cold, it's okay. It'll be kept at an optimal temperature. And I'll leave you with this. This is all manufacturers, I think, would say the same thing. And I particularly know a lot about International and IC Bus and Bluebird. I was a contractor for a bunch of years, and I had their buses. And I'll tell you from all of our perspectives, the school bus, the bus itself is the same bus as any other bus. It's got the same steel, same wheels, same tires, same axles, same windows, same seats, same floor, all that stuff same. Ours has even got the same radiator in it. I say this for a reason. The EV bus is expensive today, and it's largely because of the battery technology. That's where it's all at. We take a Cummins diesel engine out, we all offer it, take that out, set it aside, we put electric motor in. That's kind of a wash. You got a tranny or not a tranny, it's kind of a wash. The money comes into the battery. So what I believe, and I'll share this with you guys, the price of the vehicles will come down with economies of scale. So the infrastructure bill, what that's going to do for all of us in the next 5 years, it's going to help seed that economies of scale. It's going to seed getting electric buses out. And the more electric buses that are on the road, the price will come down, just like anything else, like computers or anything. Look at what a plasma TV cost you 10 years ago. It's 15 grand hanging on the wall. Today you can buy a LED for $200. The price of all this stuff is going to drop. So as you get pushback from people, it's cheap or it's crap, it's expensive, and the government's going to help pay for it, and that's the only way we can do it. Yeah, it is. But as time goes on, the prices will start coming down. And in 5 years, I'd be really curious to see what this whole looks like and what all of us will be selling buses for, what the price will be. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be quite a bit less. So with that, I'll leave you guys to carry on.
Thank you very much, Todd. That was great to hear. And because we're short on time, I believe we will, unless John or Lisa wants to stop me, I think we might just follow up on any questions via email. But we would really like to say thank you very much to all of our attendees and our speakers for joining us today. I know it was jam-packed with a lot of really great information, and I'm sure we could have gone on for another hour. But we'll be sending you an email shortly with some good resources and a link to an evaluation that we would really appreciate you filling out. There'll also be some links to sign up for our 2 Clean Cities monthly newsletters to get up-to-date information. And as always, feel free to reach out to us. You have our contact information there on the slide. And please feel free to ask any questions along the way. So thank you again, and hope you have a good rest of your Friday.
Thank you, everybody.